Finally, they understand why attacking Earth means certain doom. The Galactic Council chamber was silent for the first time in its 1,000-year history. The assembled delegates stared at the casualty reports displayed across the central hologram. 3,200 ships lost. 2 entire fleets destroyed by a single planet. The numbers seemed impossible, yet they were undeniable. High Chancellor Morvex had been removed from power. In his place sat Emergency Coordinator Thralvex, chosen for her reputation for calm judgment during crises. She looked across the frightened faces of the council members and spoke with quiet authority. "The Dominion cannot survive another defeat like this," she said plainly. "Our member species are questioning our strength. 3 systems have already declared independence. If we attack Earth again and lose, the Dominion will collapse entirely. Then what do? Council member Drath asked, his forearms hanging limply at his sides. "Accept defeat from primitives." "They're not primitives," Archivist Lithara said from her seat in the gallery. Unlike before, she had been invited to the session. Her warnings had proven correct. "That's what we must accept first. They are something we haven't encountered before." "Then what are they?" Thralvex asked. "Survivors," Keeper Nexrun replied, standing beside Lithara. "They are a species that evolved in continuous conflict and learned to thrive because of it, not despite it." Thralvex nodded slowly. "I am authorizing a diplomatic mission to Earth. We need to understand them. Not their weapons or their tactics, but them. Who they are, how they think, why they fight the way they do. Perhaps understanding will show us a path forward that doesn't end in mutual destruction." The vote was unanimous. For the first time, the Dominion would approach another species not as conquerors but as students. 3 cycles later, a small Dominion ship approached Earth, broadcasting peace signals on all frequencies. Researcher Velthas led the scientific delegation, accompanied by Archivist Lithara and a full medical team. They had requested permission to visit Earth's surface under strict diplomatic protocols. To their surprise, humanity agreed. Secretary General Jiho met them at the landing platform in Geneva. She was a small woman in her 60s, her gray hair tied back efficiently, her face showing the lines of someone who had carried heavy burdens. She wore simple civilian clothes, not a military uniform, and her smile seemed genuine despite the circumstances. "Welcome to Earth," she said through translation devices. "I'm told you want to understand us. That's a good start." Captain Yuna, a young military officer assigned as diplomatic escort, led the delegation through the human city. The Dominion visitors expected to see military installations, weapons factories, soldiers on every corner. Instead, they saw parks, schools, markets, people going about normal lives. "Where are your warriors?" Velthas asked, confused. "You're looking at them," Yuna replied. "Every person you see has completed military service or serves in reserve units. Every adult here knows how to fight if needed. But they're also teachers, doctors, engineers, parents. We don't have a warrior class. We're all warriors when we need to be." The delegation visited museums that displayed human history. They saw artifacts from ancient wars, weapons that seemed primitive but had killed millions. They read accounts of battles fought with swords and spears, then rifles and cannons, then missiles and atomic bombs. The progression was steady and terrifying. Scientist Suman guided them through the Museum of Human Conflict in Berlin. She was a cheerful woman in her 40s who spoke enthusiastically about humanity's darkest moments, as if discussing interesting puzzles. "This is a trench from the Great War," she explained, pointing to a recreated battlefield. 2 sides faced each other across a few hundred meters of mud for 4 years. Millions died fighting over kilometers of ground. It was horrible and pointless, but we learned so much about logistics, medicine, communications, and industrial mobilization. "You celebrate this?" Archivist Lithara asked, horrified. "We remember it," Suman corrected. "We don't celebrate war. We study it. Every conflict taught us something. Every defeat showed us weaknesses to fix. Every victory proved methods to keep. We became very efficient at learning from our mistakes because making the same mistake twice could mean extinction." The delegation met with biologist Minho at a research facility in Seoul. He explained human evolution using models and genetic data. "We're endurance hunters," he said, showing them anatomical diagrams. "See these long legs? Efficient for distance running. These feet? Perfect for absorbing impact over many kilometers. This skin with millions of sweat glands allows us to cool while running in heat that kills most animals. We evolved to chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. And you applied this to warfare? Velthus asked. We applied it to everything, Minho replied. We don't give up. It's in our biology. When we decide something is important, we keep working at it until we succeed or die trying. Usually we succeed eventually because we're very hard to kill. Psychologist Yoonjin met with them in Tokyo, discussing human social behavior. She was a quiet woman who chose her words carefully. We're tribal, she explained. We form strong bonds with our groups and view outsiders with suspicion. For most of our history, the tribe in the next valley was a competitor for resources. We learned to cooperate within our groups while fighting others.
When you attacked us, you unified all human tribes against a common enemy.
You gave us something we rarely have, a clear outside threat. So you're naturally aggressive? Keeper Nexrun asked. We're naturally defensive, Yoonjin corrected. We fight to protect what we consider ours. But we define ours very broadly. Our families, our communities, our nations, our planet, our species. Attack any of those and you face all of them. The Dominion didn't attack a military. They attacked humanity's home. Every human took that personally. The delegation toured weapons facilities, seeing the technology that had destroyed Dominion fleets. Engineer Hyejin showed them the dreadnought construction bays, massive underground caverns that had taken decades to build. We didn't know if aliens would be friendly or hostile, she explained. So we prepared for hostile and hoped for friendly. We built these ships over 70 years, one piece at a time in absolute secrecy. We tested every component thousands of times. We trained crews on simulators for decades before the ships ever flew. When the Dominion attacked, we were ready because we'd been ready for generations. This level of preparation seems paranoid, Velthus observed. It's practical, Hyejin replied. Paranoia kept our species alive. The tribes that prepared for threats survived. The ones that didn't prepare died out. After millions of years of evolution rewarding cautious behavior, it's built into how we think. We see potential threats everywhere and prepare for all of them. On the final day, Secretary General Jiho invited the delegation to her office overlooking Lake Geneva. She served them earth beverages and spoke candidly about humanity's future. You came here expecting to find a warrior culture, she said. What you found is more complicated. We're not warriors by choice. We're warriors by necessity. Our history is violent because our world was dangerous. We fought each other because resources were limited and survival meant competition. But we also cooperated, built civilizations, created art and music and literature. We're capable of both great violence and great beauty. Why didn't you expand into space earlier? Archivist Lithara asked. You had the technology generations ago. We were busy fixing our own problems, Jiho replied honestly. Climate change, resource depletion, political conflicts. We nearly destroyed ourselves several times. We achieved global unity only 50 years ago. Before that, spreading into space seemed less important than surviving on Earth. But while we were fixing our problems, we were also watching the stars and preparing for the day someone might come through them. Researcher Veltas processed all the data they had gathered. I need to ask directly. If the Dominion had come peacefully, offering trade and friendship instead of conquest, how would you have responded? Jiho smiled. We would have welcomed you with open arms. Humanity has always been curious about what's out there. We would have been eager to learn, to trade, to share knowledge. The weapons you faced, all that preparation, it only activated because you threatened us. If you'd come as friends, you would have found friends. The words hung in the air. The Dominion had spent resources, ships and lives trying to conquer a species that would have willingly joined them peacefully. The waste of it all was staggering. What happens now? Keeper Nexrun asked. That depends on the Dominion, Jiho replied. We don't seek revenge. We don't want to conquer anyone. We just want to be left alone to grow and explore at our own pace. If the Dominion can accept that, we can move forward peacefully. If not, she left the threat unspoken. The delegation returned to the council station and presented their findings. The report took 3 days to deliver in full. When it ended, the council chamber remained silent for long minutes. Finally, Emergency Coordinator Thralvek spoke. Based on this evidence, I move that Earth be granted immediate sovereign status with full diplomatic recognition. All hostilities will cease. A demilitarized zone of 50 light-years will be established around human space. Finally, they understand why. Attacking Earth means certain doom. Fleet Marshal Kravoth commanded the largest military force the Dominion had assembled in 3 generations. 2,000 warships spread across space in perfect geometric formations. each one a floating fortress armed with weapons capable of cracking planets. He stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Endless Victory, watching the blue dot of Earth grow larger on his screens. "Deploy sensor nets," he ordered. "I want every asteroid, every moon, every piece of debris larger than a pebble identified and tracked. The humans hid weapons last time. They will not surprise us again." His crew worked with professional efficiency. Advanced sensor drones spread throughout the solar system, using quantum detection methods that could penetrate any known stealth technology. Within hours, the hidden human weapons began appearing on tactical displays. "Sir, we've located over 4,000 hidden installations," reported Sensor Chief Velcron. "Asteroid-based railguns, nuclear laser arrays, missile platforms, the works. Exactly as Intelligence Officer Thrakor described. Mark them all for destruction," Kravoth commanded. "Bombardment drones, begin systematic elimination. I want every hidden weapon destroyed before we approach Earth." The fleet's bombardment drones, small automated ships carrying heavy explosives, swarmed forward. They moved in groups of 50, targeting the marked installations methodically. Asteroids exploded in brilliant flashes as the drones found their targets. Weapon platforms that had waited a century in darkness died before they could fire a shot. Admiral Jiwon watched the destruction from the UHN's Busan, her new flagship after Seoul took damage in the first battle. The outer system defenses were dying, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. The Dominion had learned. They came prepared this time. "How long until they finish clearing the outer defenses?" she asked. "At current rate, 15 cycles," replied Tactical Officer Minji, a young woman with dark circles under her eyes from too many sleepless nights. "They're being thorough. Every installation we built is being destroyed." "Then we move to Phase 2, Jiwon said calmly. "Pull all ships back to Mars orbit. Send the signal to Earth Command. Tell them to activate Protocol Scorched Sun." Deep in the bunkers beneath Geneva, Defense Minister Hana received the signal. She sat at a conference table surrounded by Earth's remaining leadership. President Taewon looked older than his years, his face gray with stress. Ambassador Youngman stared at tactical displays without blinking. "They're through the outer defenses," Hana announced. "We knew this would happen. The asteroid weapons were always meant to be the first line, not the last. Now we show them what Earth itself can do. What if it's not enough?" Taewon asked quietly. "Then we make them pay so dearly that the next species that finds us will think twice," Hana replied. "But it will be enough. We didn't spend 100 years preparing to lose now." She activated the command console. "Protocol Scorched Sun is authorized. All planetary defenses full activation. All dreadnoughts begin launch sequence." Across Earth's surface, hidden systems came alive. Mountains split open to reveal electromagnetic pulse cannons the size of buildings. Ocean platforms rose from the depths, shedding water as fighter launch bays opened. Cities that looked peaceful from space revealed their true nature as weapons platforms disguised as civilian infrastructure. But the most impressive sight was the dreadnoughts. In 47 locations around the world, the ground itself moved. Massive doors, each 1 kilometer wide, slid open to reveal launch shafts that descended deep into the planet's crust. From these shafts rose ships that had been built in absolute secrecy over decades. The UHNS Indomitable was the first to emerge, rising from beneath the Pacific Ocean. 15 kilometers long, bristling with weapons that had never been tested in actual combat. The dreadnought was a monument to human paranoia and preparation. 46 more followed, emerging from beneath mountains, deserts, oceans, and ice caps. Fleet Marshal Kravoth watched in disbelief as the massive ships appeared on his screens. "What are those? Why didn't our intelligence detect them?" "They were underground, sir," Velcron stammered. "Beneath the planet's crust where sensors can't penetrate. They must have been building them for decades." 47 capital ships, Kravoth muttered. "They built 47 capital ships in secret." He shook off his shock and focused on tactics. "It doesn't matter. We still outnumber them 40 to 1. All ships advance to Earth orbit. Prepare to engage their dreadnoughts. Show them that size and surprise aren't enough to win wars." The two fleets met near Mars. The Dominion formation was perfect, a wall of warships advancing in coordinated waves. The human dreadnoughts spread out, each one accompanied by clusters of smaller vessels. They looked outmatched, outgunned, doomed. Then the shooting started. The human dreadnoughts opened fire first. Their main cannons were particle beam weapons. accelerating protons to near light speed and directing them in focused streams. The beams cut through Dominion shields like hot knives through butter, punching holes in armor and setting off cascade failures in power systems. Evasive action, Kravoth shouted as his flagship rocked under the impact of a particle beam. Return fire all weapons. The Dominion fleet responded with overwhelming firepower. Energy beams and missiles filled space, converging on the human ships. Several dreadnoughts took hits, their shields flaring and failing under the concentrated assault. But they kept firing, kept advancing, kept fighting. From one of the dreadnoughts, Engineer Taewon coordinated the battle from deep within the ship's engineering section. He monitored power systems, routing energy to weapons and shields as needed, keeping the massive vessel operational despite damage that would have crippled lesser ships. Forward shields at 40%. His assistant called out over the noise of alarms and explosions. The port side is taking heavy fire. Reroute auxiliary power to port shields, Taewon ordered. Drop shield strength on the starboard side by 20%. They're not shooting at us from that direction anyway. The battle developed into a brutal slugging match. The Dominion ships had numbers. The human dreadnoughts had firepower. Vessels died on both sides, torn apart by weapons that reduced matter to its component atoms. But then humanity revealed another surprise. From Earth's surface, from the moon, from orbital platforms thousands of small craft launched. These weren't traditional fighters. They were missiles with human pilots inside. Commander Kyung led the first wave, his craft accelerating to relativistic speeds. His cockpit was cramped, his life support limited, his weapons non-existent except for the mass of his vessel itself. He was a guided bullet, and his target was a Dominion battleship 3 times the size of a human dreadnought. "Remember your training," he broadcast to his wing. "Speed is everything. They can't track us if we're fast enough. Hit them where their shields are weakest." "Die well?" "Die well," came the response from 100 other pilots. They hit the Dominion fleet like a swarm of hornets, each one carrying enough kinetic energy to crack a ship in half. Dominion point defense systems tried to shoot them down, but the kamikaze craft were too fast, too small, too many. They slammed into hulls at significant fractions of light speed, and ships broke apart from the impacts. Fleet Marshal Kravoth watched in horror as his carefully organized fleet dissolved into chaos. The human tactics were insane. They were throwing away pilots like ammunition, but it was working. His ships were dying faster than he could coordinate responses. "Pull back to defensive formation," he ordered. "Concentrate fire on their dreadnoughts. If we can break their capital ships, their fighters will have nothing to return to." But the humans had one more surprise. From Earth's surface, scientist Suman activated a system that had been her life's work. The Pandora Protocol, named after an ancient human myth about opening a box of evils. Millions of microscopic machines, each one a miracle of nanotechnology, launched from concealed orbital platforms. They spread through space like an invisible cloud, seeking Dominion ships. When they found one, they went to work. The nanomachines didn't explode. They didn't burn. They simply disassembled. They took apart Dominion hulls molecule by molecule, breaking atomic bonds and reducing sophisticated alloys to component elements. Ships didn't explode. They dissolved, coming apart in slow motion as their hulls turned to dust. "What's happening?" Kravoth demanded as his fleet began disintegrating. "What weapon is this?" "Unknown, sir," Velkron replied, his voice shaking. "Our ships are just falling apart. Hull integrity failing across the fleet. The material itself is breaking down." Kravoth made the hardest decision of his military career. All ships retreat. Emergency withdrawal. Get out of this system now. The surviving Dominion vessels turned and fled, leaving behind wreckage and dying ships. The Third War fleet had entered Earth's system with 2,000 vessels. Less than 200 escaped. As the last enemy ship vanished into hyperspace, Admiral Jiwon broadcast a message on all frequencies, knowing the retreating ships would carry it back to the Dominion. Finally, they understand why attacking Earth means certain doom. The Galactic Council chamber filled with angry voices. High Chancellor Morvek sat rigid on his throne, his face darkening as the reports from the 47th Subjugation Fleet played on the central display. Wreckage tumbled through space. Bodies floated among debris. Of 200 ships, only 41 had returned. "This is unacceptable," roared Council Member Drath, his forearms gesturing wildly. "A primitive species destroyed over 3/4 of our fleet. The Dominion has never suffered such a defeat." Commander Vextel stood before the council, his body covered in medical bandages. His ship had barely made it back, the hull cracked and systems failing. He kept his eyes forward, accepting the verbal assault without defense. They were not primitive, Vextel said quietly. Everything we thought we knew was wrong. They had prepared for us. The entire solar system is a weapon. Excuses, Chancellor Morvex slammed his fist on the armrest. You were outmaneuvered by primitives. You let them destroy our ships with rocks and simple kinetics. This humiliation will not stand. The Dominion will respond with overwhelming force. The council members shouted their agreement. Plans formed quickly. The Third War Fleet would be dispatched, 2,000 ships strong. They would carry planet-killer weapons. No more attempts at vassalage. Earth would be sterilized as an example to any other species that dared resist. As the council debated deployment strategies, a quiet voice interrupted from the back of the chamber. I request permission to speak. The shouting stopped. Everyone turned to see Archivist Lithara standing at the entrance, her robes marking her as one of the keepers of history. Beside her stood Keeper Nexrun, ancient and stooped, guardian of the forbidden archives. Chancellor Morvex frowned. Archivist, this is a military matter. Your presence is not required. With respect, Chancellor, it is very much my matter, Lithara replied, walking forward without permission. I have been studying Earth since news of the 47th Fleet's defeat reached us. What I found in the restricted archives demands your immediate attention. The archives contain nothing relevant to this discussion, Morvex said dismissively. We are preparing for war, not reading ancient history. That is your mistake, Keeper Nexrun said, his voice cracking with age but carrying surprising strength. History is the only thing relevant to this discussion. If you launch another fleet without understanding what you face, you will lose them too. Silence fell across the chamber. Keeper Nexrun rarely left the archives. His appearance here meant something serious. Chancellor Morvex gestured reluctantly. Speak then. But be brief. Lithara activated her data crystal and new images replaced the battle footage. They showed Earth, but not from space. These were surface images, recordings captured by long-range probes over the past 3 cycles. Humanity's recorded history spans approximately 12,000 years. Lithara began. In those 12,000 years, they experienced only 268 years without major armed conflict somewhere on their planet. That means they have been at war somewhere, with someone for 98% of their existence as a civilization. Murmurs rippled through the council. Council member Drath scoffed. So they fight among themselves. Many primitive species do before achieving unity. Not like this, Lithara countered. She brought up new images. They don't just fight. They study warfare. They write books about it. They create art celebrating it. They build monuments to their warriors. Their children play games that simulate combat. Their entertainment industry produces thousands of stories about war every year. They have universities dedicated to military strategy. They give medals and honors to those who kill most effectively. More images appeared, ancient human texts, translated into council script. This is called The Art of War, written 3,000 years ago. Humans still study it today. This is On War, written 500 years ago. Also still studied. They have accumulated thousands of years of tactical and strategic knowledge, passed down through generations, constantly refined and improved. Keeper Nexrun stepped forward. Most species discover warfare when they encounter other species. Humans discovered it when they encountered other humans. They have spent millennia perfecting the art of killing beings identical to themselves. They understand psychology, deception, and strategic thinking at a level most species never reach. These are just primitive philosophies, Chancellor Morvex argued, but his voice lacked conviction, are they? Lithara challenged. She brought up biological data. Let me tell you about human evolution. They evolved as persistence hunters. Do you know what that means? They don't have our speed or strength. They can't kill prey quickly. Instead, they chase it. For hours, for days. They track their prey until it collapses from exhaustion, and then they kill it. She highlighted sections of the data. Humans can run in extreme heat that would kill most species. They sweat, cooling themselves while their prey overheats. They can maintain a steady pace for hours without rest. They can track prey across vast distances using pattern recognition. They evolved to never give up, to outlast any opponent, to keep coming no matter how many times they fall. Council member Cybok leaned forward, interested despite himself. But this is hunting behavior, not warfare. They applied the same principles to war, Lithara replied. Look at this. New images showed human conflicts throughout history. In their ancient wars, they marched armies hundreds of kilometers. They carried supplies for months. They built fortifications that took years. They besieged cities for years if necessary. They never stopped. They never gave up. They just kept coming. Keeper Next Run activated another section of data. Here is something else. Humans have multiple independent innovation centers. When one culture developed a new weapon, others quickly copied and improved it. They shared knowledge of warfare faster than knowledge of anything else. Within 40 years, they went from simple aircraft to atomic weapons. In another 80 years, they went from atomic weapons to antimatter theory. They innovate under pressure, Lithara explained. Every conflict teaches them. Every defeat shows them weaknesses to fix. Every victory proves methods to keep. They learn faster than any species we've encountered because failure means death, and they refuse to die. She brought up the most disturbing data yet. Now let me tell you about their weapons. They didn't just develop weapons to kill. They developed weapons to terrify. Chemical weapons that dissolve lungs. Biological weapons that spread through populations. Radiation weapons that poison land for generations. They created weapons so terrible that they agreed among themselves never to use them. Then they are not as dangerous as you claim, Morvex said. They restrain themselves. No, Keeper Next Run said firmly. They restrain themselves when fighting each other because they understand mutually assured destruction. But those weapons still exist. Those knowledge bases remain. If threatened with extinction, do you think they will maintain those restraints against an alien species they owe no kinship? The question hung in the air. No one answered. Lithara continued relentlessly. They weaponized their economy. They weaponized their information networks. They weaponized their culture. During their greatest conflicts, entire populations mobilized for war. Factories that built consumer goods converted to building weapons in months. Scientists who studied medicine switched to studying better ways to kill. Children as young as 16 volunteered to fight. Their entire civilization can transform into a war machine. She showed images of human cities. These look peaceful, don't they? But beneath every major city, they built bunkers. Beneath their mountains, they built command centers that can survive nuclear strikes. They scattered their leadership across their world so no single attack could destroy their government. They prepared for total war while hoping for peace. This is paranoid behavior, Council Member Drath protested. This is survival behavior, Keeper Next Run corrected. They nearly destroyed themselves multiple times. They survived by preparing for the worst while hoping for the best. When they finally achieved global unity, they didn't dismantle those preparations. They redirected them outward toward the stars. Lithara brought up the final piece of evidence, Project Fortress. We found references to it in their leaked communication networks. They began it 100 years ago when they first detected intelligent life among the stars. For a century, they prepared for this moment. They built weapons in secret. They trained in silence. They waited for someone to find them and mistake their preparations for primitiveness. She looked directly at Chancellor Morvex. Commander Vextal didn't fail. You sent him against an enemy that has been preparing for war since before your grandfather was born. The 47th Fleet walked into a trap that was a century in the making, and you want to send the 3rd War Fleet into the same trap, only bigger. We will not repeat the same mistakes, Morvex insisted. The 3rd Fleet will go in prepared. We will detect their hidden weapons. We will deploy countermeasures. You still don't understand, Lithara said sadly. Humans don't just prepare for the last war. They prepare for the next one. By the time your fleet arrives, they will have new weapons, new tactics, new traps. They learn from every engagement. They adapt faster than we can plan. Finally, they understand why. Attacking Earth means certain doom. The Dominion fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system like a school of metal fish breaking through dark water. 200 warships, each one a masterpiece of engineering and destruction, arranged themselves in perfect formation. Commander Vextal watched the display, screens with satisfaction as his sensors began mapping the human. Defenses, report, he commanded from his command. Throne. Sensors detect 89. Human vessels concentrated near Neptune's orbit. Intelligence Officer 3 Corps announced. They appear to be their entire fleet. Energy signatures match our previous scans. No new weapons detected. Their orbital stations have been evacuated. The planet's surface shows signs of panic. Massive population movements toward underground shelters. Vextal nodded. They know they cannot win. They're preparing for occupation. Hold position and broadcast surrender terms one final time. If they refuse, we eliminate their fleet and proceed with pacification protocols. The message went out across all frequencies. Commander Vextal gave humanity 1 hour to respond. He expected compliance. Most species chose survival over pride. On the bridge of the UHNS Seoul, Admiral Jiwon read the surrender demand with cold eyes. Around her, the bridge crew worked in tight silence. Every person knew their role. They had practiced this scenario 1,000 times in simulation. Now it was real. Send the response, Jiwon ordered. Tell them we refuse their terms. Tell them Earth will never surrender. Communications, Officer Daeho's hands shook slightly as he transmitted the message, but his voice remained steady. Message sent, Admiral. Good. Jiwon activated the fleet-wide channel. All ships, this is Seoul Actual. Execute Alpha Protocol. Make them think we're desperate. Make them think they've already won. And when they commit, we show them the truth. The human fleet broke formation, ships scattering in what appeared to be panic. Some vessels fired their engines at maximum burn, trying to flee deeper into the solar system. Others held position, but their weapon systems cycled erratically, as if crews were fighting over whether to fight or run. Watching from his flagship, Vextal felt a familiar mixture of contempt and pity. They cannot even maintain formation discipline. Advance the fleet. First wave, prepare to engage. Target their command ships first. Once their leadership falls, the rest will collapse. The Dominion fleet surged forward, engines burning bright. They closed the distance rapidly, their superior speed making the pursuit almost casual. Within 20 minutes, they entered weapon range of the scattered human vessels. Fire, Vextal commanded. Energy beams lanced through space, crossing millions of kilometers in seconds. 3 human destroyers exploded in brilliant fireballs. 2 more took critical damage and went dark, tumbling through space. The remaining human ships returned fire, their railguns launching metal slugs at relativistic speeds. The slugs hammered into Dominion shields and bounced off harmlessly. Vextal allowed himself a small smile. Continue the advance. Destroy them all. But then something changed. The fleeing human ships suddenly reversed course, their engines flipping orientation in maneuvers that should have torn them apart. They weren't fleeing anymore. They were positioning. Sir, Three-Core said, his voice uncertain. I'm detecting energy signatures from the asteroid belt. Thousands of them. They weren't there a moment ago. Impossible, Vextal said. Scan again. Before Three-Core could respond, the asteroid belt erupted. What had appeared to be ordinary space rock suddenly came alive with light and power. Hatches opened on thousands of asteroids, revealing weapons that should not exist on rocks floating in space. Magnetic accelerators, each 1 kilometers long, launched tungsten rods at 40% the speed of light. The rods crossed the distance to the Dominion fleet in seconds. They hit with the force of nuclear weapons, but they were purely kinetic. No energy signature to detect, no warning before impact. 12 Dominion ships vanished in the first salvo, their shields useless against the sheer mass and velocity of the projectiles. The rods punched through armor like paper, breaking ships in half or reducing them to expanding clouds of debris. Evasive action, Vextal roared. Return fire on those asteroids. The Dominion fleet scattered, firing energy beams at the attacking asteroids. Some found their marks, vaporizing rock and metal. But for every asteroid destroyed, 10 more revealed themselves. The belt had been transformed into a fortress, and the Dominion fleet was caught in its kill zone. Laser arrays activated next, firing from hollowed-out asteroids that served as perfect cover. Nuclear-pumped lasers, powered by controlled fusion reactions, cut through space with invisible death. More Dominion ships died, their hulls sliced open or their reactors breached. Then came the drones. Millions of them, each no larger than a human fist, swarmed out from hidden bays. They moved with insect-like precision, targeting the Dominion ship's sensor arrays, engine nacelles, and weapon ports. The drones carried simple explosives, but they attacked in such numbers that even shields couldn't stop them all. We're losing formation cohesion, Three-Core shouted over the chaos. 63 ships destroyed. Hull breaches on 40 more. Request permission to retreat. Vextal stared at the tactical display in disbelief. How had the primitives hidden all this? How had his scouts missed an entire weapons network? His training warred with his shock, but survival instinct won. All ships retreat to hyperspace exit points. Emergency extraction. The Dominion fleet turned and burned hard for the system's edge, where they could safely engage their faster-than-light drives. But as they approached the exit coordinates, new warnings blared across every ship. Hyperspace field disrupted, a sensor officer cried. Gravity anomalies at all exit points. We can't jump. Admiral G1 watched the Dominion fleet's confusion with grim satisfaction. They found our mines. Activate gravity disruptors full power. Keep them trapped. The human fleet, which had appeared broken and scattered, now moved with perfect coordination. They had never been fleeing. Every movement had been calculated to drive the Dominion ships deeper into the kill zone, farther from escape. Engineer Keyoung's voice came through the command channel from his position on an asteroid weapons platform. Admiral, the disruptors are burning through power fast. We can hold them for maybe 30 minutes. That's all we need, Ji-won replied. All weapons platforms concentrate fire. Don't let any of them reach minimum safe jump distance. The battle became a slaughter. Dominion ships tried desperately to fight their way out, but everywhere they turned, more weapons revealed themselves. Human ships, no longer pretending to be helpless, coordinated with the asteroid defenses in a deadly dance. They had trained for this, prepared for this, dreamed of this moment when the first aliens would come and think humanity was easy prey. Commander Vextal's flagship shook as another tungsten rod grazed its shields. He gripped his command throne to avoid being thrown to the floor. Around him, damage reports flooded in faster than his crew could process them. Sir, we need to abandon ship, Thraker urged. The main reactor is failing. No, Vextal growled. Get us to the nearest exit point. Override all safeties. We jump even if the field isn't stable. It was a desperate gamble. Jumping through disrupted space could tear a ship apart. But staying meant certain destruction. Vextal watched as his fleet died around him. Ships that had served the Dominion for decades, crews that had conquered worlds, all reduced to wreckage by humans who were supposed to be primitive. Some ships made it. They reached the edge of the disruption field and jumped, their hulls stressed and systems failing but alive. Others weren't as lucky. 41 ships escaped. 159 did not. The 47th Subjugation Fleet, which had expected an easy conquest, limped back to Dominion space carrying the wounded and the traumatized. As the last Dominion ship vanished into hyperspace, Admiral Ji-won allowed herself a moment of relief. But only a moment. Get me damage reports, she ordered, and prepare a message for Earth Command. Tell them the first wave is repelled, but they'll be back. Next time they'll bring more ships. Communications Officer Daeho worked his console, then looked up with an odd expression. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission. It's from one of the destroyed Dominion ships, emergency beacon. They're broadcasting to their fleet. What's it say? Daeho read the translation. Sir, Intelligence Officer 3 Corps' final message. It says they weaponized their entire system. Every moon, every asteroid, every piece of rock has weapons. They've been preparing for centuries. This isn't a primitive species. This is something else. Warn the Council. Ji-won turned to look at the view screen, which showed the asteroid belt still glowing with the heat of recent battle. Good, let them be warned. Let the whole galaxy know. Earth doesn't start fights, but we always finish them. The bridge crew cheered, but Ji-won remained silent. She knew this victory was only the beginning. The Dominion wouldn't accept this defeat. They would come back with overwhelming force, and humanity would be ready. In the deep bunkers of Earth, Defense Minister Hana received the battle reports with satisfaction but not celebration. She immediately issued new orders. Every defense platform went to full alert. Every hidden installation received resupply. Every weapon system underwent maintenance. 3 months had passed since the incident. The Galactic Council Station had returned to its normal rhythms of diplomacy and trade, but something fundamental had changed. The way species looked at humans was different now. More careful, more respectful, sometimes fearful but always taking them seriously. Bora walked through the station corridors on her way to her first official assignment as a junior diplomat. At 23, she was young for the position, but the expansion of human diplomatic efforts meant they needed more personnel. She had been training for this moment for 2 years, studying alien cultures and learning the complex dance of interstellar politics. A group of Talaran merchants moved aside as she approached, nodding respectfully. 6 months ago, they might have ignored her completely. Humans had been seen as naive newcomers to galactic affairs. Not anymore. She arrived at the human embassy quarters and was surprised to find Ambassador Doyen waiting for her. "Ambassador," she said, trying not to show her nervousness, "I didn't expect to see you today. I thought you were meeting with the Morgathi delegation." "That meeting was postponed," Doyen said with a slight smile. "I wanted to see you before you shipped out to your assignment." "May I walk with you?" "Of course, sir." They walked through the corridors together. Doyen moved with his usual calm grace, acknowledging other diplomats who greeted him. Some with warmth, some with wariness, but all with respect. "I've read your assignment briefing," Doyen said. "You're going to the Kepler station. It's a good post for a first assignment. Lots of trade negotiations, cultural exchanges. Relatively quiet." "I'm looking forward to it," Bora said. Then, because she had to ask, "Sir, can I ask you something about what happened? About the Vex situation?" Doyen nodded. "Of course. In training, they taught us that diplomacy is about finding middle ground, about compromise. But what you did?" "What we did. That wasn't compromise. How do we balance those two things? How do we know when to negotiate and when to not?" Doyen stopped walking and turned to face her. "That's the right question to ask. And here's the answer. We negotiate everything. Trade agreements, territory rights, cultural disputes, resource allocations, everything. We are generous in our negotiations. We give more than we take when possible. We build relationships and trust." He paused, looking out a viewport at the stars beyond. "But there are some things written in stone, not sand. Some principles that cannot be compromised. For humans, the protection of children is one of those principles. You'll find that most species have similar non-negotiable values. The key is knowing what they are and respecting them. But how do you know where that line is?" "You feel it," Doyen said simply. "When you're facing a situation and every part of you says this is wrong, this cannot be allowed, that's when you know you've reached a principle that matters more than diplomacy. The important thing is to be clear about where those lines are. Don't hide them. Don't pretend they don't exist. Tell people clearly, just like I told the council." Bora nodded slowly. "I understand." Across the station in one of the educational centers, Minji stood in front of a mixed class of children from a dozen different species. She was one of the children who had been taken by the Vex. Now, 3 months later, she was part of a program where the rescued children talked about their experience to help other young beings understand what had happened. "I was scared," Minji told the class honestly. "When the Vex took us, I didn't know what would happen. But Hana, she's younger than me, and she kept singing. She knew her dad would come for us. She knew all our parents would come for us. And they did." A small Morgathi child raised a tentacle. "Were the Vex mean to you?" "No," Minji said thoughtfully. "They kept us in a room and gave us food. They didn't hurt us. I think they didn't understand what they had done. They thought it was just politics. They didn't understand that taking someone's children isn't politics. It's war." In another part of the station, Ambassador Jihoon of the Lorne species met with Doyen in a private conference room. The Lorne had requested this meeting weeks ago, and the human ambassador had finally found time in his schedule. "Thank you for seeing me," Jihoon said. "I wanted to discuss a proposal. My people have observed how humans protect their young. We have similar values, though perhaps not as strongly felt. We wish to propose a formal alliance based on shared principles." Doyen leaned forward with interest. "What kind of alliance?" "A mutual defense pact specifically focused on the protection of children. Not just our children and yours, but all children. We have noticed that since the Hana Protocol was passed, enforcement has been inconsistent. Some species take it seriously. Others pay only lip service to it. We want to create a coalition that will actively work to protect young members of all species." "That's an ambitious goal," Doyen said carefully. "It is, but necessary. The Vex incident showed that there are still species who view children as acceptable leverage. We need to change that thinking across the entire galaxy. With human military capabilities and Lorne diplomatic influence, we could make real progress." Doyen considered this. "Let me discuss it with my government. But I think you'll find humanity very interested in this proposal." Over the following weeks, other species approached with similar proposals. The Telrathi, who valued education above all else, wanted to collaborate on programs to protect students of all species. The Belgarians, focused on justice, wanted to establish courts specifically for crimes against children. The Morgathi, with their long lifespans and patience, offered to fund long-term protective infrastructure across the galaxy. What emerged was not a military alliance, but something more subtle and potentially more powerful. A coalition of species united by the principle that children of all species deserved protection. They called themselves different things in different languages, but humans called them the Protective Alliance. Hannah returned to school at the council station. Security was tighter now, but the children barely noticed. They were too busy playing and learning. She sat in her classroom, a mix of human and alien children working on a project about different cultures. "What did you learn from your experience?" her teacher asked her. It was a gentle question, asked in private while the other students worked on their projects. Hannah thought about it seriously. "I learned that my dad keeps his promises, and I learned that when someone does something really wrong, sometimes you have to stop them. Not because you're mean, but because it's the only way to make things right." "That's very wise," her teacher said. "My dad says that we should always try to solve problems with words first. But he also says that some rules are more important than being nice, and everyone needs to know which rules are which." The teacher, a Telleran who had once thought humans were too emotional and irrational, nodded slowly. 3 months ago, she would have argued that rationality should always prevail. Now she understood that some things were too important for pure rationality. Some principles had to be absolute. In the council chamber, a new debate was taking place. A species was requesting membership in the council. The review process was standard until someone asked a new question. "What are your species' principles regarding the protection of young members?" The question was now mandatory for all new species. The answer mattered. Species that couldn't demonstrate strong protective measures for their children found their applications delayed until they could implement better safeguards. The galaxy was changing. Slowly, carefully, but unmistakably, the incident with the Vex had done more than punish one coalition. It had forced every species to examine their own values regarding children. Some species strengthened laws that had grown weak. Others created new protections that had never existed before. All of them understood that humanity had drawn a line in the stars and meant to defend it. Doyen stood at his viewport again, watching ships come and go from the council station. Hannah was safe at school. The diplomatic work continued. Relations with other species were better than he had dared hope 3 months ago. Fear had given way to understanding. Understanding had led to cooperation. Cooperation was building something new. Jiwan joined him at the viewport. "Admiral Minho sends his regards. The fleet is standing down from high alert. We're back to normal patrol status." "Good," Doyen said. "How are you holding up?" "Better now that we're past the crisis. I've been working with other species' security forces on joint protocols for child protection. It's actually bringing us closer together." "That's the hope," Doyen said, "that something good can come from something terrible." They stood together in comfortable silence. Outside, the galaxy turned. Millions of species going about their lives, trading, talking, learning from each other, and now, protecting each other's children. Because humanity had taught them a lesson that the galaxy would not forget. Some principles are worth fighting for. Some lines cannot be crossed. And when someone tells you who they are and what they value most, you should believe them. The warning had been clear. Harm a human child and you won't survive to regret it. The galaxy had learned, and in learning, it had become something better than it was before.